Hello, this is Oblivion Fall. I'm the lead animator for NightFalls Studios. I've also animated several other things, such as Ponies with Hats and Epic Rage Time. I'm just going to be commentating on the time-lapse for a Colt classic. You may have already seen a shorter version of a time-lapse. This one's going to be a bit longer. I've slowed it down. I'm going to be going more in depth on everything that you're seeing. This is actually about 70 hours worth of footage, which I've cut down and shortened. I got some parts out. I'm just going to be going over, some of the process and some interesting things that happened during production, so yeah. Alright, so here you see me working on one of the early shots. In the corner, my friend Sean is playing Twilight's Escape. It's a pretty cool game that Emogak voiced in. And Wooten. Don't forget Wooten, he's pretty cool. Anyway, you're not here for that. There's a lot of Skype on the corner, but throughout this whole thing, here I'm talking to aficionados, Chris, and all that. But, anyway, that's not the important thing. The important thing is the animation. So you can see me here. I think this was the shot where Rainbow Dash shoots the thing out of her mouth, and now you can see me drawing a transformer of Kagomi's OC. Yeah, there's a bit of mucking around. And it's peaky crap. Stuff's going, even though I slowed it down, there's still stuff going by so fast I can't talk about it. How about that? So yeah, this animation was, let's see, when did I start it? Probably back in January, maybe before then. I don't remember exactly when Kagomi and Lost came up with the idea, but basically they were in a Skype call. I don't remember exactly what they were doing, but they were like in character. Lost was obviously being Applejack and Rainbow Dash, and Kagomi was being Twilight, and they were just having this banter back and forth. I wasn't there, but I heard about it. And yeah, they just kind of improved this whole animation in a Skype call months ago. Originally, Rainbow Dash was the one talking to Twilight and Applejack was being sacrificed, but I changed that in scripting time. And we thought the idea was good. She was like, hey, you should animate it, because I was thinking of what to animate next after Dr. Sombrero, so I thought, okay. So in January, I started making backgrounds, and then let's see, I was really busy around February because I was trying to find a job and everything else and got on the way, so production actually started pretty late. Well, technically it started in January. The actual animation process itself was closer to April. So yeah. Anyway, so you may see here, I've used quite a few show references already here. That is me grabbing a reference from Lesson 0 where Twilight, is poking her hoof on Spike's chest, and I wanted to use that as a reference for Twilight putting the book in Applejack's mouth. Even though they're two different things, I thought the timing would be a good idea to copy. Here I'm doing a little extra movement on AJ's face because she goes like hump. She makes a hump noise. There I'm revectoring a bunch of mouth shapes on Twilight because, as it turns out, I actually made these mouth shapes all the way back with Dr. Sombrero. And back then I used the brush tool to vector my puppets, which is a very terrible idea. Don't use the brush tool when working in show style. Always use the line tool. It's much cleaner and gives you a lot more control. But I didn't know that until after Dr. Sombrero, so at several points throughout here you'll see me redrawing a lot of parts of my puppets just to make them look cleaner, because, I'm always upgrading my puppets, I'm always improving them, and I always redraw a bunch of parts, and sorry, I spoke very fast without taking a breath. Let's see the Twilight movement. Here I'm actually taking a single symbol and I'm splitting it into a bunch of parts. Oh, that was a Scribbler talking about anthropology, which is a very good story that we did an audio play of. That's a little off topic, but yeah, here you see me vectoring a wing. I'm redrawing it on different layers and stuff so I can make it move. So I want our wings to open out at the end of this line. I didn't want them to open fully because it would cover up too much of the frame, basically. And this part here of Twilight's hoof was probably the thing that took the longest, given how much work it was. All she does is lift up a hoof, but for some reason it took me 3 days because I didn't really know what angle to take. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with this movement, so I spent ages mucking around trying to think, what should I do? Do there's a hoof pointing that way or whatever, blah, blah, blah. Boring stuff. So yeah, that shot took a lot longer than it was supposed to. And you may have noticed that you're only seeing footage from the end of the animation. That's because I didn't actually start making the time lapse until like 2 weeks before the animation came out. So even though we started animating at the end of March, beginning of April, I only have footage from like July pretty much. There's all this time missing. Granted, for about 2 months I was working an office job, and I wasn't able to animate very much at all during that time, so understandably there's very little footage from there. The only footage from that time was the one where Kagome was a transformer at the beginning. I drew that weird thing on Rabadesh's face. I'm lucky I have footage from, a little bit of footage from the early animation because, well, that was actually just me recording things on Skype calls where I was mucking around. But anyway, oh yeah, you can see me listening to T-Bap in the corner. I'm a big fan of T-Bap, by the way. Two Best Brothers, Boosh About Ponies. And then that Shoe One Head, another great YouTuber. Oh yeah, the Sleepy Cast. You're gonna see a lot of Sleepy Cast in that bottom right corner. Left, right, no, that's right. I always get my lefts and rights confused. Yeah, Twilight. Why did it pause? What was I doing? Oh yeah, that's right, I was doing some audio editing. I don't remember what the audio editing was for. Just from the vectors on Twilight again. Alright. Me adjusting the wings some more. Oh yeah, and then this shot with Rainbow I actually did very fast. I think I did the whole shot in like half a day. It's one of the fastest shots I did in the animation. At least one of the fastest shots that actually had talking in it. I was very much rushing. Let's see, what date was that? That would have been the 6th of July. So yeah, this was only like 5 days before the animation came out at this point. So as you can see, the second third of the animation, maybe actually like the whole second half of the video was made in like 2 weeks. Maybe even a large chunk of the video was made in the last 2 weeks, whereas everything else took months to get together because, I was looking for work and then I had a job and everything else. And then I lost that job and I thought, you know what? I have more time to animate, provided I can make money, which is why I got Patreon. And that's why I started recording this. So, if I get Patreon and also maybe open commissions and a few other things, I could do animation full time. Make animations a lot faster. If I still had my job, this animation probably would not be finished for another couple of months. Being perfectly honest. Yeah, here's me getting another show reference. I knew I needed a Twilight to get all mad for horn. I knew there was what was it? Canterlot Wedding, Part 2. Enter the Caves, there's a lot of stuff. Oh yeah, this fire effect was a lot of fun. There's basically a lot of ovals that I've stretched really thin that I basically spam all over the place. And I make this weird spamming line animation or whatever you call it. And I repeat it a bunch of times, and that's that. And that there is the changeling fire when Queen Chrysalis summons herself in Canterlot Wedding as well, which I recreated myself and merged with my other fire effect, and it looks pretty cool, I think. Also added a gradient because gradients, when used correctly, can be very useful on Flash, but don't use them for shading if you can avoid it. Gradient shading doesn't usually look good. It's usually good for lighting effects, as seen here. And eyeballs. That's the only other time I use gradients. Okay, I guess Cadence's hair has a lot of gradients in it, but I've never had to animate Cadence, so yeah. Oh, this fire effect. I'm really proud of this fire effect, actually. It looked a lot better than I thought it would. I was actually originally planning on referencing a T-Rex magic, because he shoots a fiery thing out of his horns. However, his has a lot of black streaks in it, which I didn't end up using. Here I'm using that thing where, notice in this show a lot, they like to tilt their heads up on this funny angle. And I don't see a lot of fan animations doing that, so I like to do it because I like to, try things that I don't see very often, such as a head tilty thing. That was me watching one of Grant Budet's old videos. It was a weird Jack Black commercial from the 80s when he was a little kid. Again, I get distracted by anime sometimes. I've been talking to some people in my chat. So yeah, now, if you're wondering, Sean Webby is a guy who helped out a lot during this whole production. And one of the main things that he did was lip sync. Now, he didn't do the final lip sync. He would do a rough bass. Like, he would pretty much key in all the timings for all the syllables with rough mouth shapes that I would go in later and, add a little more in-betweens to make the mouth transitions a bit smoother. Sometimes I would... there was actually one shot where he had Twilight smiling where I changed it to frowning. That was the "Let this book indulge you in the art of Tartarian magic" line. He wanted her to be smiling for that line, and I was like, nope. Oh, and here, yes, you can see me using that effect from the fire effect from before to disintegrate Rainbow Dash. So what I did was I made one yellow and put it on top, and I made one black and put it underneath, and basically like spammed them over several frames. And then what I did is I converted everything to one layer and deleted the yellow, which is how you get these gaps. And then I had to go in afterwards and tweak it. And here I'm doing the gradient glowing effect using the show as a reference, because the show is a fantastic reference. You should always use it. When in doubt, look at the show, see how the show does it, because the animators there are very experienced and very talented and probably know what they're doing. And, we probably don't know as much as they do, because they've been working on the show for a lot longer, and yeah. Let's see. Adding Applejack and Twilight into the shot. I have this cool shadow effect where the shadows actually move. They flicker with the light, which is pretty cool. That was a weird video that just popped up in the corner. I don't even know what I was watching. That was me looking at our episode. Yeah. And then me doing some lens flare effects to light up the whole frame when the fire bursts out. Alrighty. Now here you can see me doing some lighting on the trees to make a little bit of lighting reflect off. I made it very subtle in the end, but it is there, and it does add a lot to the animation. And I did some movie clips to blur it. Here I'm editing one of the earlier shots where Twilight says, "Here, you arrived just in time." Originally the movement was a lot less expressive, I guess. I just basically went back and exaggerated the movement, which is what I was doing there. That was me sending a preview of the animation to Radiark, who did the music. He's a very talented musician. I just wanted to say, hey man, just letting you know I'm going to be using your song and some of it, and hope it's alright. I never heard back from him, but he hasn't said anything, complained, and he's let me use his music before, so it's probably fine. Don't get the copyright police on me. No, it's fine. And here you can see me doing the lighting on Twilight. Now you notice, with this shot I had a choice. I either had to make Twilight stand completely still and have cool lighting, or I could have Twilight move and no lighting. Because having advanced lighting like this is really hard to do when the characters are moving, short of using external programs, but then you can get a weird bevelly effect, which isn't good. There is an alternative method of doing lighting where you make a shadow version of a puppet, which is basically the same animation rig, but it's completely colored black and has some parts cut out for the shadows, which is something I would have done for the whole animation, except seeing as I lost my job, I needed to get this thing out, really quickly. I got this out within 2 weeks of losing my job, so there's a lot more stuff I would have done with this animation if I had slightly more time, but we kind of had to rush because we had to get this out of the way so I could start commissions and also get the channel running again and, launch our Patreon. Again, thank you everyone for supporting. It's thanks to you that we're able to do stuff like this. Yeah. Now doing Applejack's no movement. Originally, it didn't look like no, it looked like nyah, because I didn't make the O sound at the end. And Sean had to correct me. See, he didn't lip sync this part. See, he was always giving me animation advice. There were a lot of points where I wasn't sure how I wanted to do it, or I'd make a movement and the movement would look really bad, and in my head I'd know I'd have to redo it, but I wouldn't. I'd just get confused and I'd be like, I'll just procrastinate. And then Sean would be like, Christian, stop it. The movement looks bad, redo it. And I'd be like, okay, I'd redo it. It gave me a lot of help like that. Here I'm doing a shuttle vibrating effect on Applejack's mouth. It's going, no, it's kind of opening and closing over a couple of frames. Custom mouth movements. And I'm doing her head tilting side to side. She's kind of shaking her head subtly as well, which, again, it's the kind of thing, movements like that, like in your head, you're always like, oh, I don't want to animate that movement. It's going to be a pain. I'm just going to put it off till later. But then you actually sit down and do it, and the movement's pretty easy. And then you're like, oh, why was I procrastinating that? It wasn't too bad. It was pretty good. Yeah. Again, I originally wanted Applejack's mouth to close with some big teeth. Which, again, it didn't look like no, it looked like not. Which, again, I'm glad Sean corrected me on that. That there was a lip syncing issue with keys going out of frame. Me typing the Skype chat a lot. That's a common theme. I used to have dual screens. Hopefully, if I can afford dual screens again, I could have the flash thing fill the whole frame. I don't know, maybe you like seeing me mucking around in the corner of my animation. Who knows? And here you see me doing some audio effects. Here I'm actually grabbing a lot of monster sounds from various sound packs and also from the show to make Celestia sound more demonic. Originally, it was just a voice with a creepy effect on, but I added some like roars and snarls and other bestial things inside of it, and I made them match up with the syllables, and it really made it creepier. And here you see me working on an entirely new Flash file for this part. Flash lags after a while if you have too many frames. I was several thousand frames into the last file, so I wanted to make a fresh one. Here, I did some hair animation on Rainbow Dash, which you probably noticed if you watched it, but it's not something you see in the fandom very often, but basically what I did is each strand of hair I put on its own layer, and I just made them move back and forth, by the same amount actually, but I made them move back and forth at slightly different times. The tail was the most confusing because all of the lines that intersect were in the way, so I had to do a couple of blobs on top to even out the places where the lines broke. It looked pretty bad at first. Let's see, Rainbow Dash talking to herself. Alright, that was me making another mouth shape. Rainbow Dash needed a smaller mouth shape for her side view, so I went and made that. That's what that was. Yeah. Me doing a little movement where she's groaning. Again, this is 128 times speed. The other version of a time-lapse, the one with music, is like 512 times speed, which is absolutely nuts. Originally I thought, I'll animate a time-lapse at like 4 times speed or 8 times speed, because that's what I used to do in the past when I made stick figure animations. Long before Pony, back when I was, that was me watching Titanic. Can't forget the flying eggplant or Mom's spaghetti. Yeah, Lee Maymays. Lord of the memes, guys. I'm so pro. It's me missing for the audio. Yeah. Rainbow Dash, what are you doing? You're not dressing. Oh, she had Fluttershy's eyes for a second. She almost became a blind bag again. I don't know if you caught that right. That's not in the final animation, but yeah. Oh, here you see me working on Celestia now. Unfortunately, the creation of this Celestia is not recorded, because I actually made Celestia back in February, when I was doing all the backgrounds. And I even did a little bit of animation on her before I had the audio. We didn't record this until like the end of February, early March. And here you see me grabbing a lot of custom shapes that I made, and using them to dirty up her hair to make it look more gritty, which is always fun. Grittying up things is something I used to do a lot back in my pivot animation days. I always had very gritty looking animations. MLP is like so much cleaner by comparison. It's good though, I like it. Yeah, Rainbow Dash. Giving the bedroom eyes. Not really, she's not. She's just tired actually. Not enough sleep, man. Surprisingly, I didn't get a lot of late nights with this. And a little kind of half eyebrow thing. Yeah, I always do hoof movements. I have the hooves as one symbol by itself, and I animate separate movements inside of the hoof movements. It's pretty cool. Oh yeah, that was that Lyra animatic. That was really great. That was in the corner. But yeah, I guess I'll talk a little bit about my methods. One of the keys to making your animations look good is you make different body parts move at different times. And whenever a symbol is nested inside of another one, for example, the foreleg of a hoof inside of, the leg symbol itself, you always delay those movements by a couple of frames, usually only 1 or 2 frames, but it makes the movements look much more dynamic. And usually if you're doing a full body movement like this one here, now you can see me adding in the frames in the top. At first I put all the keyframes on the exact same time, but afterwards you'll notice I'll go through and I'll grab certain body parts and I'll delay them. And sometimes I'll move them forward. Rainbow Dash's bottom leg actually moves before the rest of her body, so you can see me dragging the frames back and forth. And then redoing them, and then dragging them back because I realized that something was wrong and I have to fix it, which happens a lot. But again, soon you'll see me dragging the frames, which are currently all on time, out of time. And it makes the movement more dynamic, it makes it look less robotic, which is always a really good thing to do. Also, the hair movements make a huge difference. I think people forget how, I don't think they forget, it's just that, having the hair movements delayed from the rest looks really good. Here I'm watching an episode of Pony with Jake. That's Jake from State Farm, by the way, he's a cool guy. He was behind on the episode, so I had to catch him up. The Moon Dancer episode was already out at this time, so yeah. But yeah, so another thing I do that is different from a lot of other animators is most of my tweens are actually split in half. I'll do a regular tween, and I'll put a keyframe in the middle of the tween, ease out on one side, ease in on the beginning side. Usually people just go to the graph editor and do a single tween with the easing out and in on both sides in the graph editor. I don't do that. The reason is because I find it easier to keep track of when things are moving at their fastest and when they're moving at the slowest just by looking at the timeline. And it's actually really useful for hair movements because at the point where something begins to decelerate, that's where the hair starts to accelerate forward. So if a character moves its head forward, I have the hair move in the opposite direction at first as the character is accelerating. But that's only as the character is accelerating forward, is when the hair moves at the opposite direction. After the character reaches its top speed, the hair stops moving backwards and starts to accelerate forward as the character decelerates forward. And at the point the character stops, that is when the hair is moving its fastest. So the double keyframe twinning method, or whatever you want to call it, I don't really have an official name for it, is really good for hair movements and other things. Here you see me drilling up the rest of Celestia's hair, just as I'm talking about hair, I'm doing stuff with Celestia's hair. Me watching a video on Bees by Kurtzgesagt, which is a really awesome channel that has really cool animation and graphics in it. Here I'm referencing Twilight, because I need Rainbow Dash's head to be tilted up on that one angle. And I already animated Twilight doing that, so I'm just copying in the pose to get it matching up. Oh yeah, that's Nostalgia Critic there. Another channel I follow. Yeah, so Rainbow Dash is doing a thing. So how far are we in this? Oh yeah, we're 3/4 through the time lapse already. Yeah. Now here you notice when Rainbow Dash's head is tilted up, I'm actually very careful to make sure that the outline of her head does not break. I actually put a dark colored black sphere behind her head to make it so that when she turns her head down, the outline of the back of her neck connects to her head smoothly. Now, this broke in the final animation. I accidentally changed something inside of Rainbow Dash's head symbol, which screwed this up last minute, and I didn't fix it until it was too late. So, yeah, there's a pretty serious animation error on Rainbow Dash's neck and head in the final video right before Celestia appears. If you look, around closer to her ear where it touches her neck, the outline is missing, basically. Now, I fixed that originally, and then I accidentally unfixed it. And it's not too bad. It's actually a common error in the show, and a lot of fan animations have that same problem. But, I wanted to be cool and not have that error, and I messed it up. That was me listening to the Rickroll song to wake up Kagome because she was asleep. She was sleeping in, and I played that really loud to wake her up. That was what that was. Yeah, see, you can see me referencing the show again. Now notice that I don't never trace anything. I just kind of look at it, see what makes that face appealing, and I replicate it without tracing it or anything else. Tracing is probably bad. Except, I guess, when you're building puppets, I guess it's acceptable, because you want to, especially if you're me and you want things to be show style, you know, I want things to look as close to a show as possible, so I trace individual parts, but my movements, I do not trace. But I do reference sometimes, because again, show is amazing reference, always use it. Unless you're not animating show style, then maybe you don't have to. Ramadash is screaming, eh. Actually, I did a cool remix of this, The Lost Narrator, who voiced Ramadash. She's a very awesome person. You should totally go subscribe to her right now, whoever's watching this. Probably like 5 people, I don't know. I don't know how many patrons we're gonna get. But yeah, hopefully we'll get a few. It's nice to get support. But yeah, Lost Narrator, she did a fantastic job. And although some people have pointed out that she doesn't sound exactly like Ramadash, which is true, but I think more important than sounding like the character is getting the acting to be good. A good performance is always better than sounding like the character. That's why I don't go to people like Rina-chan for Twilight. Not that she'd say yes, because Rina-chan's way too busy and doesn't do pony stuff anymore, but I don't, you know, I feel that Imogak gives a really good performance for Twilight, and so I pick that. She also just so happens to sound pretty much exactly like Twilight in my opinion, but people can disagree. Performances are always good, because your performance is what brings out the best of your animation. You know, if you've got a great performance, that means you can do really exaggerated animation with crazy movements and extreme poses, which is what I like. Now, with this animation, obviously there are always things that could be improved. I could have made some poses more extreme, which I didn't. Oh yeah, if you're wondering why the word dicks is below Celestia's mouth, or teeth, I guess, her sharp teeth, I did not have her mouth symbol synced up to the rest of the timeline. And so I wanted to reference the show Rise and Shine, because in case you didn't know, Celestia is saying, rise and shine. And I wanted the mouth movements to sync up with that, so I put D-I-C, you know, for the 3 syllables. I'm immature. God help me. So yeah. That was just a timing reference so I could get the mouth movements synced up to the animation. I hear I'm grabbing I'm actually reusing some animation footage from earlier in the animation. Oh hey Slim Shady, what are you doing? Yeah, Slim Shady is an interesting censor. But yeah, I'm actually reusing the animation from earlier in the video for the Praise the Sun stinger at the end, which again was another flash file. Oh here we go. Here I'm working on my end slate. And you can see me bringing up a lot of reference images for other channels and slates to make my own. I'm actually very proud of mine. It ended up looking a lot better than I thought it would. So yeah, here you see me just mucking around trying different things. Plugging my other animations in the bottom. Oh, and there, that's me not animating on Colt Classic, that's me making a YouTube thumbnail for one of Emogak's fanfic readings, which you should check out, totally. And here I'm vectoring the Patreon logo, so I can scale it without it breaking. Which is nice and easy, it's just pretty much all straight lines and circles, which is always nice. And then you draw a bunch of straight lines and circles and fill them in, and bam, you got a logo. See, this is why the line tool is great. In the past, I would have used a brush tool, which would have sucked. Or I could have used a text tool, but I don't know where to get the Patreon font, so maybe someone watching this knows and thinks I'm a noob. I'm a noob, guys, you got me. Yeah, and then doing the credits. So I like to have an end slate and credits combined. But so is something I wanted, which I haven't seen very often. Usually people have credits and the end slate separate, but I wanted to combine them. And I think I did pretty good. The only thing missing is the background is gray, it should be blue. That gray background doesn't look good. And any second, I'm going to change it to blue. There we go, see, it's blue now. Which contrasts nice with the orange. And then, she was the lamp all along. I like to put the lamp in the animation. And I think that's the end of this. So, yeah. Thanks for if you stuck around for this. This is like half an hour long, I'm sure. It means a lot to me that people would watch this and also that people would support us. Obviously, you know where to find us on our YouTube channel. Obviously, why would you be a patron if you weren't, right? This has been Oblivion Fall, lead animator for NightFalls Studios, blah, blah, blah. Hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you later in another commentary in the future when I make more animations. Yeah.